was a long journey. And thank you so much, Brandon. I have a lot to owe to Brandon, in fact, of how I became chief reader. But I've had a long history with AP. I've had a longer history with College Board. I started out reading NTE exams, and then I started reading CLEP, and then I started reading SAT, and I read SATs until they went online, and I swore I would never do online. And then I went to AP. And my first year at AP, and I was walking around with the little acorn on my, and everybody was looking at me, what are you talking about your acorn? I was like, it's my first AP reading. But all of my friends had been reading AP for years. And when I first came to AP, I think Pepsi, Kelly was the chief reader, and shortly after that, Marilyn Elkins, and both of them had been dear friends for a number of years. And so they continued to push me. Within a couple of years, I was a consultant and doing workshops all over the country. But how I really became chief reader, well, I think that's how I really became chief reader. I have been working with College Board for many years in many capacities, and I love rhetoric and composition. As Brandon or Kristen might have mentioned, I was chair of the 4Cs. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the Conference on College Composition and Communication, and it is the professional organization for rhetoric and composition. So I have been very involved and became the chair of that. And soon after, I was invited to join the development committee, and it seems like they just won't let me go. And so from that time on, I have been very involved in developing curriculum, developing the exam, working with the readings. And so lo and behold, I think it was 2018, I was approached by Liz, and she said, well, how would you like to be chief reader? And I was like, not really. But she said, but you should be chief reader. And so everybody from that time on, Liz, Brandon, everyone, folks at College Board, they really pushed, and they asked me to become the chief reader. But it was after I've been with AP since 1996. And the only readings I missed was a couple of times when I decided I wanted to travel during June. But other than that, I have been with AP all of that time. And I think I established myself as someone who cares about rhetoric and composition, who cares about secondary ed, who cares about college, and the connections that could be made. And so I saw it as my responsibility and my opportunity to continue to create some synergy between secondary and college. And so I guess they liked what I said when they interviewed me, and then I became chief reader. I'm long-winded. You all have to forgive me. I'm sorry.
No, I think they probably really appreciated the background. And I think it's really worth pointing out that the people who are in these positions have a long history with the program, and that there's a kind of a family tree, if you will, of how this happened. And the same to be said for Michael Neal, who has been named the designate to fill your shoes here. Is it next year, or are we doing 2 years?
In 2024.
All right. So, and I know Michael has a long history with the program too, and also served as chair of the committee. And it's people who are deeply involved in the discipline, but also who deeply value what AP does for that. And I think that's really important.
Yes.
So
yes.
Great. So can you talk to us a little bit about, this is a friendly audience, but not everybody here has been to the reading. Most people know what we mean by the reading. They value it. They're here. They want to hear data and things. And we'll talk a little bit about those things. knowing everyone, there's only so much we can give before data reports come out in July. So, we can't start digging too much. But, a really simple question that doesn't have such a simple answer, Dooku, like, why does the reading matter?
I tell everyone that the AP English Language and Composition reading is the best professional development anyone can experience anywhere, because it's that opportunity for high school and college teachers to come together and to work together on important things, our students, and the work that those students have accomplished over the year. And I always feel like it's so amazing to see the work that our teachers in high schools accomplish. And those AP teachers, I will put up against any of my first year writing teachers any day, anytime. The care, the knowledge base, the intensity, the bringing together and looking at and understanding just what rhetoric and composition is about, to learn and to just, you're in the front lines. And so I think that it's very important for college teachers to see this and to be able to work with you. So over the course of the time that I've been doing my readings, I've had an opportunity to bond with many high school teachers as well as college teachers. I've gotten a number of articles written collaboratively through work with teachers that I have met at the reading. So the reading becomes not just a place where you realize your dreams of, this is what I was working for, but you also have an opportunity to grow and to learn and to become more and more and better and better. So the proof is in the pudding. So you watch these students and what they are able to produce, and you feel the joy that, we have a few laughs, but truly what we learn is the intensity that our teachers bring to the classroom, and that the students walk away with the intelligence, the knowledge, the critical thinking, the reading, the writing. It's all personified in that moment when you go to the reading. So that's why the reading is important. It lifts you up in many ways.
So I really appreciate that idea of the reading being the personification, the realization of all of the work of the students and the teachers. It's a beautiful way to think of it. I'd not considered it in quite those terms. I know one of the things that I emphasize in my trainings, excuse me, and you having led APSIs yourself, I know you've talked to a lot of people about this. The difference really between grading, as we might do in our classroom, and scoring, like we do at the reading. So can you attack that for us?
A little. I'd say first of all that the course is always transitioning, okay? And we are continuing to approximate what is taking place in the university setting. And so it's important to realize that when you are having a one-on-one experience with your individual students, this is your moment to teach. And so in that instance, when you are evaluating and grading, you are giving responses directly to your students to help them improve. However, when you're coming to a reading, you don't have that kind of time. You don't have that kind of communication with the students. Your job is to apply an analytic scoring guide. So we've moved away from that holistic, which I'm happy that we have. And it has taken some time for us to really adopt and understand the difference between the holistic guide and the analytic guide. But it now gives us an opportunity to think deeply, but quickly, on the process or the ability of students to, number one, read the prompt, and number two, respond to the prompt, using all the intelligence and all of the education that they've received over the year. So we are scoring, but we are providing some feedback even there, but it's mostly for the teachers. The teachers get the feedback in this instance because, of course, the students get the grades, but the teachers get an opportunity to understand what exactly are we looking at and what exactly are we evaluating. So that's different from being in the classroom and providing feedback to your students. This is not that time. When we're scoring, we have to come together, we have to develop consensus about what a 5 or a 4 or a 3, well, actually, I shouldn't even say those scores, but what a thesis looks like, or what evidence looks like, and how we can evaluate the sophistication. Those different levels, those different roles give us an opportunity to think intuitively, but quickly about what we are reading. So it's a skill. I'm going to say it. I don't think it's easy. It is not easy. It takes time. It takes practice. But if you're sitting someplace for 8 hours, you're putting in that time and that work. By the third day, you have that scoring guide in your head, and so you can read through and evaluate without rereading and studying. So that's what the scoring is about. You don't have that, even though we're calling it an analytical scoring guide, you're not stopping to analyze each paragraph and reread it and then determine it. You have to come up with a score because you have internalized that scoring guide and understand what those rows represent. Does that help?
I think it does help. And what you say about it being difficult, I don't think anybody who's been to the reading would disagree with you on that. It's one of those things that looks simple at first, but then when you really start digging into our samples and our benchmarks and seeing how those scores are applied across those different samples and benchmarks, you see how it's not so simple. You did say one thing that I'm going to ask you to say a little bit more about, because I think it says a lot about the application and the work that we have to do when we're reading. Is you said you shouldn't say a 4 or a 5,
Yeah.
those scores. And can you say a little bit more about that, please?